let's dive in. Today, we're tackling MapReduce.
Oh, an excellent choice.
And you were kind enough to send over the original Google research paper,
Yes.
which is fantastic.
It's a classic.
Yeah, it's a classic. If you want to understand how we make sense of all this data, all this big data in the world today,
Yeah,
you're in the right place.
that's right.
So this research paper by Jeff Dean and Sanjay Ghemawat,
The godfathers of distributed systems.
this is like our treasure map. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
We're going to unlock the secrets
We're gonna unlock it
of MapReduce together.
together. And I think one of the most fascinating things is how simple the core concept is.
Okay.
It's all about two steps: map and reduce.
Yeah. I'm all ears.
Okay, so imagine you're trying to count how many times each word appears in a library full of books.
Okay.
Millions of pages. Way too much for one person to handle, right?
Right.
So MapReduce tackles this by first dividing the task, and that's the map phase. Each book is given to a different person to analyze, and they create a list of every word they find, along with a count of how many times it appears.
So it's like each person is like a mini data detective
Exactly.
working on their own piece of the puzzle.
Working on their own little piece.
Yeah.
Now, once everyone has their list, it's time to combine the results, and that's the reduce phase.
Okay.
Someone gathers all those individual word counts, merges them together to create a final count for each word across the entire library.
So there's like a master detective at the end
Exact.
who gathers all the clues and puts it all together.
Puts it all together, solves the mystery, solves the case.
Solves the case. I love it.
That's the beauty of MapReduce.
Yeah.
It takes this very straightforward idea and scales it up to handle massive amounts of data.
So how does this work in real life?
Yeah.
Like, is this just a theoretical concept?
Oh, it's very much an action?
Or are there, are there
Yeah.
actual cases of it being used?
No, it's an action all the time.
Okay.
So think about Google search. When you type in a query, MapReduce is at work behind the scenes, sifting through billions of web pages to deliver the most relevant results in a split second.
Really? So when I'm searching for the best pizza place in town,
That's right.
MapReduce is helping me out.
That's right. It's helping you find that pizza.
That's amazing.
But it's not just about search.
Okay.
The paper outlines how Google uses MapReduce for a variety of tasks.
Okay.
For instance, analyzing web server logs to understand user behavior,
Okay.
see which pages are most popular.
Mm-hmm.
It also builds a reverse web link graph,
Okay.
which is crucial for ranking web pages in search results.
So Google's using this all over the place.
All over the place.
Really? Wow. That's so cool. So it's like the secret sauce then?
Yeah, it's kind of their secret sauce.
That's amazing. What about like the technical side of things? Like, can you give me some insight without getting too jargony?
Yeah, sure.
Like, yeah.
So one of the key aspects is fault tolerance. Imagine you have a team working on that library project we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if someone gets sick? Can't finish their book?
Right.
In a traditional system, the whole project might get delayed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But with MapReduce, if one worker machine fails,
Okay.
its task is simply reassigned to another machine,
Okay.
ensuring that the process continues smoothly.
So it's like a backup detective
Exactly.
ready to step in and take over.
Always there, ready to step in.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Another clever trick is locality.
Okay.
Remember how in our library example, each person worked on their own book?
Yeah.
Well, MapReduce tries to process data where it already resides,
Okay.
minimizing data transfer across the network.
Mm-hmm.
This significantly speeds up the whole operation.
So it's like the librarian knows where all the books are
That's right.
and just sends the right person to the right book.
Exactly. Why walk across the whole library when you don't have to?
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah. So these are just a few examples of how MapReduce is designed to be efficient and reliable,
Right.
even when dealing with enormous data sets and the complexities of a large-scale distributed system.
That's amazing. That a relatively simple concept, right, can have such a huge impact on how we think about information.
Yeah, it's really revolutionized the field.
Yeah.
And that impact goes far beyond Google.
Hello.
You know, the ideas presented in this research paper
Yeah.
have inspired a whole generation of new technologies like Apache Hadoop,
Right.
which continues to be widely used for processing big data.
So it wasn't just a breakthrough for Google. It was like the spark that ignited a whole new way of thinking
Exactly.
about big data.
And we'll dive into those broader implications in the next part of our deep dive.
Awesome. I can't wait
Stay tuned.
to hear more about that. All right. See you in part 2.
We'll be here.
Okay, welcome back to the deep dive. So last time, we kind of left off talking about how MapReduce handles these massive data sets with this two-step process
Yeah.
and some clever tricks to make sure things run smoothly.
It's really an amazing concept.
Yeah, and one of the examples in the paper that really jumped out at me
Yeah.
was how Google used MapReduce to rewrite their whole search indexing system.
Yeah, that's a classic example of MapReduce.
Yeah.
It shows how it really simplifies things.
Yeah. Can you, before we get into the solution, like paint a picture of what it was like
Oh,
before?
before MapReduce.
Yeah.
Well, imagine trying to organize the entire internet,
Yeah.
billions of web pages,
Yeah.
in a way that allows you to find anything quickly.
Yeah.
That was Google's challenge.
Yeah.
And their initial system relied on a series of custom-built processes,
Okay.
all distributed across numerous machines. And as you can imagine, it was incredibly complex.
Oh, I bet. Just a nightmare.
It was a headache.
Yeah.
A real headache. But then MapReduce came along, and they were able to streamline that whole process,
Uh-huh.
break it down
Okay.
into a manageable sequence of MapReduce operations.
So is it like they took this like tangled mess of wires
Yes.
and like made it into like a nice circuit board?
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it came with some major advantages.
Yeah.
The code itself became much simpler,
Okay.
easier to understand.
Right.
All those messy details of, making sure things work smoothly across different machines
Yeah.
were handled by that MapReduce library itself. So the
Wow.
developers could focus on the logic.
Oh, that's cool. So it's like, yeah, they had like a set of tools.
They had a toolbox.
The toolbox, yeah.
They didn't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's amazing is
Yeah.
that it was so efficient
Okay.
that they could keep unrelated parts of the indexing process separate before they had to kind of jumble things together
Right.
to avoid going through the data multiple times,
Yeah, that makes sense.
which just added to the complexity.
Yeah. So it made things simpler, but also just more modular,
More modular, that's right.
which is awesome.
And the paper actually mentions that one change that took months
Oh, wow.
in the old system
Yeah.
took only a few days in the new MapReduce system.
Wow, that's got to be such a relief, right, for those
Weird.
developers.
Huge improvement.
Yeah. So like how did that kind of play out in their day-to-day then? Was it a big difference for the people who were like running these systems?
It was because, with MapReduce doing the heavy lifting in terms of distributing the tasks,
Yeah.
handling failures, the whole process became much easier to manage.
Okay, so less headaches for the people actually running it.
Way less. Yeah, way less.
That's great.
It took care of all those headaches.
Yeah.
It's almost like having a self-driving car for your data.
Okay. Yeah.
You just set it and forget it.
That's awesome. And then if you suddenly need to index way more data,
Right.
you can just like add more machines to your cluster.
That's right. It scales beautifully.
That's amazing. So like so they were using it for search. Was it only for search or were they using it in other parts of like Google as well?
Well, they used it everywhere.
Really?
Yeah, the paper mentions a whole range of applications.
Okay. Like what?
From large-scale machine learning,
Oh, wait.
clustering problems,
Okay.
data mining,
Okay.
complex graph computations.
Wow.
It became their go-to solution.
So it's like they found this like one tool that can kind of answer any question they had.
Yeah, a universal tool.
Yeah. That's amazing.
And then they shared it with the world.
They did.
Yeah, they published the paper,
Okay.
which I think was a really pivotal moment.
Why was that so important?
Because it inspired others to create their own implementations
Oh.
and explore new applications for MapReduce.
Okay.
It led to the development of powerful open source tools like Hadoop,
Okay.
which is now a cornerstone of data processing.
So it wasn't just a solution for Google.
It was a catalyst for a whole new wave of innovation.
That's amazing.
And that's something we can explore further in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll take a closer look at some of the technical nuances that make MapReduce so efficient,
Yeah.
and then really look at the lasting impact it's had.
Okay. Awesome. I'm excited to dive more into that. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking a lot about MapReduce,
Yeah.
everything from like the basic idea to how it impacted Google
Yeah.
and beyond. So,
It's amazing the impact it's had.
and you mentioned that there's some technical things we haven't even touched on yet.
Yeah, there's a lot under the hood.
So I'm ready to dive in a little deeper into like how MapReduce actually works its magic.
All right, let's get into it.
Okay, so one of the key things, right, is this idea of data partitioning.
Yeah, That's a big one.
Can you remind me again, like what that even is?
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So remember, in MapReduce, we've got all these machines working
Right.
together in parallel
Yeah.
and to kind of distribute the work effectively. The initial data is divided into smaller chunks called splits.
Right, like slicing up the pizza
Exactly.
so everyone can grab a piece.
And each machine processes one or more of those.
Yeah.
But here's the clever part. MapReduce also partitions the intermediate data.
Okay. So not just the original data, but the results from each of those
That's right, yeah.
little processes.
So all the key value pairs generated by those map tasks, they're grouped together based on their keys
Okay.
and sent to the appropriate reduce tasks.
Okay.
This ensures that all the values associated with the same key
Yeah.
end up on the same machine ready to be processed.
So it's like, it's like sorting the mail before it goes to the different
Yeah.
post offices.
You got it. That's a great analogy.
Right. Like it all has to go to the same place anyway.
That's exactly right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So that makes it way more efficient then.
It's crucial for that reduce phase.
Okay.
Each reduce task can focus on a specific subset.
Yeah.
Minimize data transfer between machines. Maximize that parallelism.
Awesome. And then the paper mentioned that you can like customize the partitioning function.
That's right.
So what's the benefit of that? Why would you want to do that?
Well, one of the strengths of MapReduce
Right.
is that flexibility.
Right.
So you can optimize it for different types of data.
Okay.
So let's say you're working with like web URLs.
Okay.
You might want to partition based on the domain name.
Okay.
That way, all URLs from the same website are
Yeah.
processed together.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's cool. What about like any other like technical, I don't know, tricks, I guess?
Oh, definitely. There's this concept of a combiner function.
Okay.
Think of it like a mini reduce function
Okay.
that runs on each map task
Okay.
before the data is sent over the network.
Oh, so it's like instead of sending all that data all at once, you're kind of doing some pre-processing
That's right.
and then sending it.
So it reduces the amount of data that needs to be shuffled around.
Oh, that's clever.
It's a nice little optimization. Can really speed things up.
Yeah, so like it's almost like you're I keep thinking about mail, but it's like sorting the mail
Yeah.
before you send it out.
You're getting good at these analogies.
Yeah, that's cool. It seems like they really put a lot of thought into this
Yeah.
to make it not only powerful but
It did.
like smart.
Yeah, efficient, well-designed system.
So this same system can be used for all sorts of different things,
It can.
right?
Yeah.
Like from analyzing web logs to
That's right.
even training machine learning models.
Uh-huh.
It's amazing to me.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, that like something that came out of Google's need to
Organize.
organize the internet
Yeah.
has become this tool that everyone can use.
It's a great example of how a good idea
Yeah.
can have such a huge impact.
And then they shared it with everyone,
They did. They published the paper.
which is awesome.
Yeah, which led to the development of all these open source tools,
Right.
like Hadoop,
Yeah.
which is now used everywhere.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's been so fun to dive into the world of MapReduce with you.
Likewise.
Yeah. It's really cool to see how sometimes these really basic ideas
Yeah, deceptively simple.
Yeah.
Can be so powerful.
can have such a big impact. Well, thanks for joining me on the deep dive. Until next time, keep on exploring and keep on diving deep.